Invited you here to share the key highlights, and this will be part one from the findings of our CDD-Ghana 2020 post-election survey. CDD, as a research-oriented institution, been working towards bridging the gap between research and practice to promote good governance and inclusive development in Ghana and across Africa. And as you know, we use surveys to gauge the mood of the country as it relates to the many important aspects of life. It is also to offer feedback on the policies, programs, actions, and inactions of the state and government of the day, in its day-to-day exercise of power and the use of public resources. Lastly, these surveys offer a critical opportunity for citizens to express themselves on matters that affect their welfare. Ladies and gentlemen, apart from the Afrobarometer surveys that the Center conducts for the Afrobarometer Network every 2 years, we began conducting pre-election surveys in 2016. The aim was to pick up early warning signals by tracking citizens' opinion on the overall level of the country's preparedness for elections, public confidence in the competence, integrity and neutrality of election-relevant state and quasi-state bodies, and voter behavior, expectations, priorities, and potential turnout. The surveys also sought to help isolate and identify voter concerns regarding election security, fiscal intimidation, violence, and perceived peacefulness of the political environment. We did replicate the pre-election survey in 2020. So at least since we started, we've done it twice. Now, the outcomes of the keenly contested 2020 presidential election, which among others saw the election of a member of the main opposition, National Democratic Congress, as the Speaker of the House, considered a hung parliament, raises some very interesting questions about voters and citizen perceptions. It offers a real opportunity very early into the mandate of the installed government to tap into the expectations of Ghanaians after such an election. So, to complement the already existing pre-election surveys, which have since the last two elections contributed to the peaceful conduct of the polls, the Center initiated the post-election survey this year to measure post-election expectations and views on local government decentralization and other issues. So in essence, part of the maiden edition of the CDD-Ghana post-election survey data releases for today will focus primarily on the New Patriotic Party's government's performance in the delivery of its 2020 manifesto promises, as well as the expectations of Parliament. So we are looking at citizens' expectations of the MPP manifesto promises because we are still in the first year of the new term of the MPP government. Now, it is our hope that the results from the research we are releasing today and what we will release subsequently will be useful in helping the leadership of the country as well as the political class work towards addressing the concerns of citizens. And it's our hope that the media and the general public will hold our leaders to account to ensure that we reap the dividends of democracy. Now, finally, let me thank the USAID Ghana for their support. And now I would let me invite Dr. Adam Salome, who is our Director of Research, to take us through the presentation. Thank you very much.
country to hand over their coordinating directors because their tenure had elapsed. We also heard that over 1,300 candidates were reported to have applied for the position of MMDs across the 216 districts. We also had the Appointment Committee of Parliament beginning the vetting of ministerial nominees. Issues of corruption were rife around the COVID-19 contracts too at the time, particularly the US $2.1 billion US dollars. Within the economy too, there was an uproar over the president's supposedly spending of 2.8 million cedis for a rental of a luxurious private jet on his visits to France, Belgium, South Africa. And then there was a call for a probe into that by the MP for North Tongue. The government also announced plans to introduce several taxes aimed at raising the needed resources to alleviate the COVID-19 financial crisis. Also with illegal mining, Galamsey was still in the news, so the Operation Halt was launched to get rid of illegal miners in the Pra River and Cobra Enclave. Military men bent excavators and other mining equipment in a bid to rid the country of illegal miners. There was also prosecution of persons who were suspected to be illegal miners in the country. Then the hashtag Fix the Country movement was also rife in the news at the time, and the youth who were mainly unhappy about certain things in the economy over successive governments' failure to improve the lives of citizenry or took to social media to vent their disapproval. Then was also in the news was the regional police commanders' injunction against the proposed fiscal gathering of the Fix the Country protesters at the time. So these were generally the things that were in discussion whilst we were conducting the survey. So I'll move quickly now to the survey methodology, which doesn't depart from our methodology for all of our surveys. We use what we call a nationally representative sample of adult citizens. And I must emphasize that this is not a census where everybody is supposed to be interviewed. So it's just a sample of adults who are selected. So all respondents are randomly selected. The sample, of course, is distributed across regions, urban and rural. The population is in fair share of the national adult population. Every adult citizen, therefore, has equal chance of being selected. We use face-to-face interviews in the language of the respondent's choice. Our sample size for this survey was 2,400 randomly selected adult citizens. Findings, a margin of error of plus or minus 2% and a confidence level of 95%. The data was collected from May 23rd to June 3rd. So now to the demographics of the survey. Now I'd like you to focus on the section that is highlighted blue and what we've called the adult population projection. Now that is the official census data for Ghana, and you can see that our sample closely mirrors that. I'll just highlight a few things in that demographic. So we have urban in our sample 53% and rural 47%. Now we had towns and villages covered in the EAs. The EAs is what we call the enumeration area of 199, and so on. The age. So our sample, of course, covers, the demographics, the social demographics of our society. So the age range, as you can see, over 50% or 50% falls within the young, what we call the youth of the country, so 18 to 35 years. The highest, the oldest person was 102 years old, the youngest person, of course, 18 years. For the gender distribution, because we practice what we call the gender alternation, we usually have a 50-50 split in our survey sample. So moving on with the demographics, the sample also covers the educational sector as well. As you can see, the highest in the sample is junior high school at 29%, followed by senior high school. Of course, this collaborates with the demographics, or the age demographics. It covers the religious sects as well, so 80% were Christians and 16% Islam and 2% traditional and 1% nothing at all. For employment, we have 23% of those who have no job and are not looking for a job, and 16% who have a job and are looking for a job, and 50% have a full-time job, and 11% have a part-time job. Still on the demographics, we have the various occupations. So you see that again, the highest is in the agricultural area and the retail area. So 50% of our sample falls within the agricultural fishery area and then the retail trader vendor area. Only 2% are in the so-called upper professional level. So, okay, so I think Kujo did mention a few things about the survey where we decided to collect the data. And so I'll just highlight one or two things. Again, we wanted to get an interpretation from citizens of the outcome of the elections. Of course, we all know how the election turned out. We had a few surprises there. We also wanted to see the expectations of their views on the expectation of the likely hung parliament, the expectations of the likely impact of an NDC Speaker of Parliament, and the expectations regarding the performance of the NPP government in the next 4 years. So these were generally the questions that we wanted citizens to give us their opinions on, and so the findings will mainly revolve around those questions. So now to the findings. All right, so one of the first issues that we thought we should present was the perceptions about the reduction in the president's vote margin, because in 2016 he did get something and in 2020 reduced marginally. So we see that a cumulative 58% attribute the reduction in the president's vote margin to his policy decisions and actions, his MPs and appointees' performance, and the president's own performance. So people are laying the blame squarely on the president and his appointees' laps as to why he got a reduced vote in the 2020 elections. We also wanted to find out the same about the parliamentary seats, because the NPP did lose a number of parliamentary seats. Again, respondents attribute the loss of their seats to their non-performance, which is the parliamentarians, and non-performance, bad campaign, and the non-performance of candidates who were already in parliament. So this is the attribution our respondents ascribed to why the NPP lost the number of seats they lost in the 2020 election. Of course, we wanted to find out why the NDC got seats as opposed to what they got in 2016. Again, our respondents attribute the gains the NDC made in the parliamentary elections to the MPP's non-performance, their MPs' non-performance, and the NDC's own campaign, and the performance of their candidates during the campaign process. And also, they wanted to punish the MPP for non-performance. All right, so I'm going to move quickly to the opinions of citizens on policies and rule of law and governance. And you'd wonder why I had to talk about that first. We asked questions about, the efficacy of the elections and all of that, but we thought, we moved away from, election time, so there was no need. So I'm moving straight down to what citizens feel about governance. So again, regarding the prospective evaluation of government service delivery, in general, we see that a significant minority of Ghanaians are optimistic that in the next 4 years, the Nana Akufo-Addo NPP-led government will perform much better or better in addressing public social delivery services, but are less optimistic about the government's ability to reduce crime, and they are also less optimistic about the government's ability to fight corruption and ability to promote collaboration between the ruling opposition party and his party. So what are some of the expected changes in management, or changes in the way the Akufo-Addo-led NPP government will handle a number of national development issues in the next 4 years? So for instance, you see that 70% are saying that they are optimistic that the provision of education infrastructure will meet and to meet free SHS needs the government will meet those expectations. We also see that citizens are optimistic that fixing roads and infrastructure, the expected changes that would occur in those areas would be met. Also, fighting illegal small-scale mining, people are expecting that there will be a few changes in how that is handled. Again, all the way down to is only when it gets to dealing with official appointees alleged to be involved in corruption that citizens don't think that there will be any significant changes in how those are managed. So what is the confidence in government's ability to fulfill its 2020 manifesto pledges? And as Kojo said, we are still in the manifesto season. I mean, the government just started. It's not even a year old. So we see that whilst there's confidence in our ability to fulfill some of the NPP's 2020 manifesto promises, there are also mixed feelings about that. So we see that there's almost a near split for when it gets to extending electricity to cover the entire population. The people are not sure that the government can meet that manifesto promise. It's when it gets to the consolidation of the free SHS policy that we see just a marginal majority saying that they are sure the government will fulfill these promises there. Again, when it comes to reopening the MMDC election on partisan line as pledged in the manifesto, citizens are almost split there. They are not sure that the government can fulfill that manifesto promise. And again, the highest there in terms of negative attribution to whether the government can fulfill that promise is the expansion of the One District, One Factory initiative across the country as pledged by the NPP. So Ghanaians don't think that is mainly possible in the next 4 years. So again, confidence in government's ability to promote rule of law and financial accountability. Whilst Ghanaians are split in their opinion on government's ability to ensure that this rule of law is upheld, majority are not confident in the ability of Nana Akufo-Addo's government to protect the financial resources and curb corruption in the next 4 years. So again, you can see that 62% over that's the highest so far in terms of people's views about whether corruption can be curbed in the next 4 years. Again, still the government's confidence in the ability of the government to consolidate and expand policy initiatives. We see that there's an equal split of respondents in their government's ability to consolidate the gains in the planting, rearing for food and job programs in the next 4 years. But the majority express lack of confidence in government's ability to expand the $1 million per constituency initiative. That's a whooping 61% are saying that they don't think that the $1 million per constituency initiative will be fulfilled. So in view of all this, what are the priorities that citizens are expecting government to pay attention to? As in many of our surveys, except the pre-election survey that we conducted last year, unemployment has topped that list again, followed by infrastructure and roads. Education comes in third. Management of the economy comes in fourth, and then health third, which is a little surprising in view of the fact that we are still in a pandemic. But these are the top priorities that citizens are saying that the government should pay attention to. And so, well, if these are the priorities, where should resources be allocated? Again, we asked citizens the priority for additional government investment. Again, we see education up there, infrastructure, healthcare, and agriculture as the 4 areas that Ghanaians actually recommend for additional investment in case government wants to increase spending. Again, so I am a little concerned about the bottom 5. Sanitation is there, given the fact that is one of the issues that has been on the agenda, of course, for the government as well, making Accra the cleanest city, for instance, but there's no alignment with what citizens are expecting. Okay, so like we said in the beginning, one of the areas that we wanted to get some sense from Ghanaians, because this is the first time this is happening in Ghana. What's the expectation of Ghanaians of the 8th Parliament? So we'll look at a few questions there as well. So again, we asked, what the impact of the current hung Parliament meant to Ghanaians, and most of them expect the composition of Parliament to impact on some parliamentary practices, function, and government business programs. So again, you see that 80%, almost 8 in 10 throughout, are saying that it will force or ensure full attendance by MPs when Parliament sits. It will improve the practice of parliamentary democracy. It will keep the executive in check. It is only when I get to aid scrutiny of international contracts that we see that it now drops to about 6.9. I would even say 7 in 10. So 7 in 10 think that, again, these are areas where we need to pay attention to, especially those of us who work with parliaments. And then again, on the expected, and it keeps going down. So still on the expected hung Parliament, again, we see a drop in that it will slow down decision making. Again, we see a drop. It's now 6 in 10, saying that it will make MPs connive more on issues that affect them. And then it drops again when it gets to disrupt the MPP government's business and agenda. So Ghanaians are not really thinking so. And then next is it will make business persons unsure of the outcome of government policies and programs. And then there are 33%, which is quite significant, who say they do not know what difference it makes. Okay, so now to the question of having an opposition member as Speaker of Parliament. Again, a majority of Ghanaians believe the election of an opposition NDC Speaker of Parliament will make the President and government more transparent and also promote NDC MPP collaboration and cooperation. So you see 71, almost 7 in 10 throughout are saying that they expect some cooperation. Okay, so again, as I said, the vetting was ongoing whilst we were collecting the data. So we see that significant minorities of Ghanaians cannot rate the various aspects of the 2021 ministerial nominees vetting. And we think this is a case of a sizable number of Ghanaians lacking the knowledge of what transpired during the vetting process. So you can see the low numbers there. We also wanted to see if there was any difference between the vetting of 2017 and the vetting of 2021. Again, we see that there's a significant minority could not offer any meaningful comparative evaluation of both vetting processes. And that also speaks volumes about whether, when people are watching the vetting on TV, who is watching and who is literate enough to understand what is going on. You might wonder, oh, there's so much talk about it, maybe on social media, but is everybody really paying attention? So I will end with a few findings about citizen expectation of public office holders, and then what we expect citizens to do, because of course governance is a two-way stream, it's not one-sided. So we asked our respondents to tell us what the public life standards of a politician and public officers should be. And Ghanaians expect politicians and public officials to be accountable to for their actions, and show integrity in their work, be honest, respectful, and competent. Of course, you would see that the percentages are a little small, but when you roll all of it together, you can tell who a Ghanaian is looking for as a public office holder. So on the other side, so what can citizens do to ensure responsive accountability? So we asked, our respondents what ordinary citizens' actions they can take or engage in to make political leaders do the right thing. Again, we see that Ghanaians expressed mixed opinions on the extent to which certain democratic engagements or actions by ordinary citizens can elicit appropriate actions from political leaders to meet citizens' expectations. And again, you see that the highest there is what we call vertical accountability. So voting against for a political party that is airing, that the airing official belongs to. So we're seeing heavily here that, people are increasingly believing in the efficacy of their vote, that their votes can really change bad leadership. And that is followed by joining others in the community to demand government action, and then so on and so forth, contacting the media by calling to a radio station program, for instance, and participating in demonstrations and protest marches. But at least on the items that ordinary citizens think they can engage in to make their political leaders act right, is taking legal action in court. So that's the least, followed by refusing to pay taxes. They don't think that if they pay taxes and fees owed to government, that would change anything. So that is where I end the presentation. So I've put the burden back on citizens. So I hope that we can have a fruitful discussion after this. Thank you very, very much. Of course, I have my team, Daniel, Mavis, and Lionel. All of them are over here to take your firing questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salome. So as Dr. Asante initially indicated, we have a cross-section of people gathered in this room. So we have people from governments, we have civil society, we have political parties, academia. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, the floor is now open. You can lift up your hand and then the microphone will come to you.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Isaac Osumesa. As part of the issues that were burning in the country at the time we were doing the survey, you mentioned that the MMDC were instructed to hand over to the respective coordinating directors. As far as we are aware as a government, we have not issued any such instructions.
So we will take 2 more questions and then the team will respond and we'll do another round.
In the news headlines and also read about them. Those are what we summarize. And we start tracking a month, like a month period within which we collect the survey and preparing for the survey. And this was one of the news items that was in the news that we picked.
Yes, and I think both statements are accurate, because the reason why we share this information is that it might have affected the person's response, even if it's misleading. So.
But on the more substantial issue, findings that you have, because we have also done some, and both quantitative as you have and qualitative as well, and it's not different from what you have, even though we have a bigger sample, as they say. But one thing that is still interesting that I was seeing as one of the top things is about the roads, because in the previous studies that you did, the road was #1, and the situation on the ground have not changed. So I asked myself the question, why is this still not the #1 issue? I don't know whether you have some findings you may want to share with us, because we also have studied that the road is not still #1. So I don't know whether the Ghanaians, we have become used to what we have now, or we think that there are other pressing issues than the road.
response questions, which we summarize. So I'm guessing that over the years we have done a lot of work around roads. Last year particularly, there were a lot of work around roads, but still, even recent, you would see that the recent rains have destructed a lot of roads around, and there are a lot of floodings and potholes emerging. So I think it's still a top issue in the minds of Ghanaians that they want government to address. Yeah. And my colleagues will add more to it.
Important things that government should address, and then based on the analysis, this is what we came up with. But I also want to stress that, in fact, from Afrobarometer survey round 2 all the way to round 6, it was always unemployment at the top there. It was only in round 7 that roads and infrastructure took the first position. And I can also testify to the fact that whatever we are seeing here are the reality, in the sense that when we monitor the field work, we see the challenges with the road and infrastructure. We see it. So when people pick these issues, you really, really know they are picking on the basis of their experience in the various communities and the districts where we conducted the survey. So basically, these things are not really, really different from what we've been seeing of late.
We see unemployment as number 1. But if we go to citizens' priority for additional government investments, we see education as number 1. And we see industry, and we see industrialization as number 4. So are Ghanaians looking at more unemployed graduates than fixing the industries to employ more people? They're rather investing into education. I think this is a very interesting finding we should look at. And it seems like Ghanaians are confused.
See, personally, I don't think Ghanaians are confused. In fact, when I also did the analysis and I saw education top here, I went back to the priority to check the position of education, and I was also asking myself the same question. But the conclusion I came to, bearing in mind the free education, the effect on people in terms of what comes out of their pocket. So at this point, they are looking at it from the personal perspective. If government will do this, it will free me from using my own funds. So even though education, I think, was a third or so, when it came to additional funding, where should government push that funding? To free myself from that burden, government should put the money there. I think that is the kind of thing I see with this kind of resource.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I think it's more of a consequential analysis. Didn't we want to invest in 1D, 1F more than go through the long route of freeing our pockets when we can actually get employed to be able to meet up with the living standards?
Yeah, remember that they said they don't think the 1D, 1F would.
Can you go back to the 1D?
Yes.
You see, the confidence in government ability to... You realize the percentage over there was so low. So if I believe I don't have the confidence that government can do this, I will not even propose that they put the money in there.
expect from this? Thank you.
Hello, I am Augustine Osumensa from the Information Ministry. I'm just wondering what approach was being used to ensure that majority of the respondents chosen were not from an area where we had some party affiliations or respondents being sympathizers of a particular political party, which could easily affect some of the outcome.
Okay, thank you. We will take the first. Okay.
Ghana Integrity Initiative. I just wanted the slide that was just moved back. The findings on the confidence of government in the implementing elections of the NDC'S on partisan line. I realized the figures were quite close, almost the same, but I don't know if the option on electing MMDC'S not on partisan lines was added. Maybe the interest of Ghanaians would have been seen there, whether they are interested in electing MMDCs, but not on partisan lines. I don't know if that could also be deduced. That would have been interesting.
To the beginning of the slide. And I think one of the things that we really emphasize when we are conducting, when we're releasing our results, and because we've had a lot of questions like this in the past, we've been doing this over 20 years, and it's mainly the question you ask about whether we went to a place that is of a certain group of people, and I would say no. There's no way any of us can sit here and determine where, you know, NDC people are mostly or MPP people are mostly. Even let's say in Accra, we wouldn't know that. But just to emphasize that we do use a random probability sampling method, which means that you could have been interviewed, I could have been interviewed, but I didn't get a chance. And like I said, this is not a survey, a census, where every household you have to go to every household. So the sample is a random sample, and when we get to the field as well, we do a lot of, you know, random sampling as well. There's a, I don't want to get very technical, but there's a work pattern that our field workers will use to count houses to their left and to the right. When they get into the household as well, there is a method that they use to select, you know, the head of house or who to speak to. So it's, I can assure you it is purely random. There's no way we could have oversampled a particular group of supporters of a particular party. Now, to the other question about the MMDC. So I'll say hold your fire. When we release the results on, so this was initially a local government survey, but we just added these post-election questions because we thought there were interesting things coming out that we needed to tease out of Ghanaians to get their opinion. So that is coming very soon. So hold your fire on that. There was another question on, oh, okay, what should the media and Ghanaians do? I think that is the whole essence of getting, you know, opinions from ordinary people, because, you know, often people who are educated like me and you think that ordinary people, somebody in a village, in a farm, does not have an opinion about anything. And so that is why surveys are very important, and surveys like this are important. It's not very easy to ask questions in a survey form, but you think that people cannot respond, but they are able to respond because we even ask the questions in the respondents' own language. So if I speak Fanti, I would say, okay, I want this, and we go to the trouble of translating our questionnaire into local languages, so everything is really brought down to the level of everybody's understanding. Now, what can you and I do? Is, you know, and that is why you're here. And we always say that the media has always been our best conduit to, you know, do advocacy. The work that we've done over the years has been through you, the media. And once you understand it the way I understand it, I'm sure the message will get to citizens. And I am particularly happy about one of our findings, which is the fact that now people think that one of the ways they can, hold governments to account is by doing certain actions, like demonstrating, for instance. In the past, when we conducted and asked this particular question, we hardly got even 10% saying that they will join a demonstration or anything of that sort. So I think gradually we are seeing the incremental changes that we want to see citizens, good citizens do in a democracy. So I think that's it. I hope this answers your question.
Hello.
The question from the lady is very important because it also deals with a lot of contradictions that our citizens, or at least it gets us to understand where citizens are. Because if you say that you've given up on fighting corruption, because in essence, and you could also see how that reflects in the priorities. The same way you're saying unemployment is high, but you're saying, well, we don't spend money on one district, one fact, or we don't even believe that one district one will work. That is also a conversation to be had among citizens. What are we saying? If you don't want government to spend on building factories and, maybe then we have to have that conversation. So I think for me, those are some of the areas, because I care about fighting corruption. There's no way this country will progress if we don't fight corruption and minimize, graft and all of those things. So I'm hoping that the media, citizens, organizations like us, this should provide good data for us to have these conversations about, how do we overcome some of these problems, and what do we communicate to government? Because I'm sure government is also sitting there thinking, well, if it's free education that you want to spend all the money, we will spend all of the money there, if that is what will get us elected. But would that, help us develop the country? So those are some of, I think, the questions that we have to confront.
Yeah, Doc. There was a slide about corruption and what they make in terms of whether they are confident in the ability of government. I was just wondering whether the researchers have a sense of what may have accounted for the outcome of the people saying that, majority saying that they are less confident. And I'm asking that because the context that was laid for the survey, there were not a lot of corruption-related issues around that time, just about one or two, not major issues. Yet the people don't seem to be very confident in the ability of government to deal with it. Is it a case that, like we've seen in the other findings that came up, more of people being tired and they don't want, maybe let's talk about other things. We've just accepted that this is now a part of us.
I have a similar question regarding crimes. There was a point made that there was not much confidence in the ability of government to fight crime. What specific reasons were given for this assessment of government's ability? Thank you.
Question.
The conversation, and I'm getting a sense of the reason why the surveyed population may have had priority on education and then unemployment could be that they feel that education is the beginning of the solution to a problem. And then the bit about unemployment, they probably do not expect government to provide all the jobs. They want the private sector empowered to be able to solve those problems for them. Because at least from personal experience since 2019, we realize that the private sector is suffering, and so people are really losing jobs. So I think it's rather an enabling environment. People expect government to provide for the private sector so that we could solve the unemployment issues. And then the education would help people get the various jobs that they want. That's my little bit.
Thank you. My name is Alex Segbefia. Just it's a clarification as to the presentation, the final document that is going to come out to help us. The results as they are, fantastic. But if you notice, even when you're speaking, you always just oppose it against what you've done in the past. And then it gives somebody a better idea of where people are thinking or where they've moved from A to B. So for questions you've asked in the past, when you do the final report, would you be also giving us that information in the report based on what you had done before? So if you ask the question of somebody, for example, in 2019 about 1D, 1F, you might have had 70% saying, yes, we want it. And now they are saying at maybe 30%. It would help us to know exactly how Ghanaians are thinking. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
In 2020, globally, the pandemic has had some devastating effect on businesses, leading to layoffs and collapse of businesses. And that if you question people in May 2021, they are not able to bring that up. Does it mean Ghanaians are not seeing the negative impact of the COVID-19, such that health is, what is it, 19%? It's serious. And it means that then people are not even going to tell the government that they are happy with Agenda 111. Is that not the case? Because they don't, their priority is with infrastructure, not their health. But if you don't leave, how are you going to enjoy the roads? Many people are dying, so they will not enjoy the good roads.
Chairman, remember that it's three options. So it's possible that somebody may have chosen health, education, and roads. So it's the fact that health is still in there, is still relevant.
But even lately, the various variants that are coming out, people who are dying with... Some people say COVID is not there. But people are dying, and the death rate is increasing. So, I don't know, but I'm disturbed by that response. As for unemployment and infrastructure, if you recall, in your pre-2020 election survey, the same degree of 57%, etc., were recorded in your CDD pre-election survey. So it means nothing has changed much. But it means the government has to do more in those areas. You people must be careful about COVID, though. Me, I've gone through it. So I'm speaking from experience, okay? I was in the ICU in Kolebu, and people were dying in front of me. So I speak from experience, okay? Be careful. All right, thank you.
Reducing crime. So these survey questions, for just a few, were open-ended. For most, they were closed. Respondents were given options, and this particular one, we're looking at citizens' expectations that these conditions will get better. And for reducing crime, they didn't, only the small majority felt that in this second term, government would do a lot, or it will get better in fighting crime. As to why their answer, we didn't ask the why. The why is not asked in this survey. It's just a few of our questions that are open-ended. But if we look at certain contexts, it may explain in our society, it may explain. And also on the issue of corruption not being in the news at the time we're doing the survey, that we could use to explain yes. So if we look at the context of asking questions, usually, or even surveys, people's mind would not go, may not even go immediately to just within the month, but even also past experiences around what have government done in terms of corruption cases. So if we think about that with past experiences with what government have done when issues of corruption come up, that then could inform a citizen whether in this second term of Nana Akufo-Addo's led government, whether they think that fighting of corruption in the government will get better. So that context could explain their response to this question because of past experiences of how government have handled such cases. And I'll allow my colleagues to pick up some of the other ones.
We ran quite a number of crosstabs and didn't show anything. It also has an end. And I'm sure the conversation has been very lively and has been very productive. And we are all going away with strong takeaways. And on behalf of CDD, I want to thank everyone here, especially representative of political parties. We've seen the General Secretary of the MPP. We've seen a high-power delegation from the NDC as well. We want to thank you and appreciate your participation in this presentation. We also want to thank all the CSOs, the media, and also the lead speaker or presenter for the research or the survey. I think she did extremely well as well. The heads of departments that are available here today, we thank you all for responding to our invitation. We are certainly sure that this conversation will be sustained within the media spaces, within our policy spaces, within government spaces, and we hope that come again, when we are doing this survey, we will be able to see some monumental progress that will inure to the benefit of the country. We thank you all once again, and we wish you a productive day. See you again. Bye-bye.